Welcome to Fellowship Safaris, conversations about people of color and their journeys to subspecialist training in their countries of origin and around the world. Welcome to Fellowship Safaris. My name is Njeri, and I'm really excited. Look, guys, I have listened. I have heard you guys complaining that I've been mainly interviewing pediatricians. I have heard the complaints and the cries for diversity. And I'm really, really excited about my next guest. And I know I keep saying I'm excited. This particular guest and I, it's been a long time coming. However, today, not even an emergency could prevent us from having this conversation today. And can I just start by asking you to introduce yourself and your professional qualifications?
Thank you so much, Dr. Njeri. It's been a while. We have planned this for so long, but we are finally here. Not even, as you said, an emergency could keep this thing from not happening today. So my name's Dr. Reuel Kageni Maina. I'm an ENT surgeon. Then I have done a fellowship in Paediatric ENT. Born and raised in Nairobi. Schooled in Nairobi all my life, from primary school to high school to campus, University of Nairobi, Masters, University of Nairobi, and then also my fellowship now. It's the point I stepped out of Nairobi.
Nice. I absolutely love it.
Yeah.
So I think I'm going to take a couple of steps back and just ask, why surgery? Why ENT surgery?
There are two reasons why ENT was a passion. First was because it encompassed all the areas of medicine. It has its, can I say, the medical side. It has its surgical side. It has pediatrics, it has adults, it has internal medicine in it, it has its pathologies, so it was encompassing all the topics that we have learned from first year to fifth year.
Yeah.
I found it to be a chilled out department. Can I say I was inspired by Professor Macharia?
Yeah, absolutely.
Prof was really cool and willing to teach. So I think that was where my liking for ENT started. And it was only 2 weeks.
Wow.
It was a 2-week rotation.
In undergrad, yes, it was a two-week rotation.
Yeah, but I found it, first of all, I found specials to be, probably that's where I'd want to. Mm-hmm. At some point, I'd thought of pediatrics, by the way.
You guy, bana. Stop breaking my heart early.
And then when I entered into ENT, then I said, probably this is where I need to be.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think it's so interesting when you talk about it starting all the way in undergrad, because for me, that 2 weeks just flew by in the sense that I was like, not what I want to do.
Yeah.
And so hearing just how much, Yani, for you, it was like this 360 dive into medicine through ENT is such a unique and valuable perspective. So what made you think about fellowship and particularly your subspecialty in the PEDS ENT fellowship? What was the fellowship, first of all, and what drew you to that particular fellowship?
Okay, so once, of course, I made that choice of ENT, I just dived into it. I joined ENT after internship. When I was finishing ENT, we had quite a number of subspecialities that we were thinking about. The most popular was oncology in ENT, the head and neck. Many people were angled to it. It was really inspiring to many of my colleagues. But people aren't looking at these other subspecialities. There are around 8 subspecialities in ENT. There's head and neck, there's pediatric, there's neurotology, there's rhinology with skull base, there's facial plastics, there's also geriatric ENT. But I saw that the pediatric population is what we deal with mostly as ENTs. In fact, 80% of our surgeries are usually adenoids and tonsils. But there are these other conditions that we didn't focus on them that much. That's what I felt. And I saw that there was a gap there, especially when it comes to pediatric airway conditions, pediatric head and neck conditions, pediatric otology. That's why I started thinking about pediatric ENT. And then I inquired from one of my mentors, Dr. Aswani, because she had done a head and neck fellowship there in South Africa. So I asked her whether there's a position for a pediatric ENT. And that's where it started. Yeah.
That's amazing, because it sounds like, first of all, I did not know that there are 8 subspecialties within the ENT specialist training. Like after you do your specialist training, now if you were to delve into a subspecialty. And, props to your mentors. I know you've mentioned Prof. Masharia, you've also mentioned Dr. Aswani. What were some characteristics about them as mentors that you are looking, to be able to gain from or grow from?
Well, basically, all of them, all the ENT surgeons, the ones who are Kenyatta based, and the ones who are University of Nairobi based. I should also mention Dr. Umutsani, I forgot. Yeah, so they had this kind of lifestyle I saw myself in. It looked like a work-life balance kind of thing, where you're able to do a clinic, you're able to do surgeries, you can be able to do emergencies once in a while and still have your own family at the same time. I wanted that. And I also wanted to grow what they have started, because we are now the next generation.
Yeah. And when we think about the fellowships, how did you figure out which place you are going to get this subspecialist training after you'd finished your ENT surgery training?
I had one of my mentors, Dr. Swani, had been to a fellowship training in South Africa. So, of course, we were looking at that. At that time, I didn't know it would be pediatric, by the way. Then we had these visiting surgeons who used to come, especially from the States. There was Professor Netterville, who is in University of Vanderbilt, I think. And there was Prof. Bush from Kentucky. Then we have this OED program for ears, for tympanoplasties, and it's called Operation Eardrop. They come from the Netherlands. So already we had this global perspective of, probably we need to go outside to learn some few things and bring back the skill back home. Yeah.
In terms of getting, the application process, was it straightforward? Was it difficult when it came to applying for your subspecialist training in South Africa?
I think I've had it a bit easy because I don't think people had thought about pediatric ENT. So, and then it was a program that was starting also in South Africa as well. They had trained somebody from Ethiopia and Uganda, and the one who was currently there, I think, was from Zimbabwe as well. So it was an opportunity for a Kenyan maybe to have a chance. So when I applied, my mentors helped me in that. And apart from the bureaucracy of documents and, notary, verifying this and this, it was pretty much smooth.
Yeah. And I think people don't really talk about how much it costs to do those applications, because like you've mentioned, it's not just filling in a form. It's looking for a lawyer to document that your documents are real, and then also sending them, because snail mail doesn't work anymore. And for some reason, they don't want them on email. They want a physical thing, so paying for express mail. So I think it's really important for people to know when you're doing that budget, when you think about what the budget is for application, there's a financial implication to it that you need to be ready for, and it can vary. Anything from, I want to say, anything between 10 and 50,000.
That's even...
That's
low.
kidogo.
That's on the lower side.
What? That's on the lower side.
We had transcripts to be verified. You remember?
Yes.
So transcripts have to be verified by that EPIC thing.
Yes.
I think it was. I can't remember what it stood for. But it was a company in. Was it Pennsylvania or what? That you have to send your documents there to be verified. Yes. So that now the board of where you're going, let's say now for me it was South Africa, maybe for you it's Canada.
Yeah.
They have to verify that your documents are legit.
Are the legit.
So
it
was 20,000 per transcript.
Oh, yes. For every
and then
year.
for every year. First year, second year, third year, fourth year, fifth year.
20
so
times
that's 100
5.
Gs.
That's already 100 Gs.
Maybe you have to
Actually.
apply for a passport so that you can.
Yes.
So that's another 15 Gs. I don't know.
Yes.
You have to go to the uni so that it's.
So that it also
they
sends
facilitate.
documents.
You pay 5K.
But then by the time you're done,
150K.
150 to actually, no wonder you looked at me when I said 10 to 50K. Like, what was your application? Actually, you're right.
Yeah.
It can go up to even 150 to 200K.
Yes.
And I think it's really important that people factor this into your budget.
Yes.
And now that we're talking a little bit about money, what was the funding structure like for you when you were going for the ENT fellowship in South Africa?
So it was a Karl Storz fellowship program. Karl Storz, of course, they're the ones who make equipment. So for Karl Storz, they would give you a certain amount of money. It was 300,000 rand in total, but the net that you get was around 220,000 rand, which is okay, I think, but it's something. And then I was lucky I had also a study leave.
Mm-hmm.
And remember, you also are paying things back home, like mortgage.
Of course. Because life is still continuing.
Life is still continuing. Life hasn't stopped.
Right. And this 300,000 was per year?
It's per year.
It's per year.
It's per year, not per month.
Right.
Oh, if it was per month, then you could extend your fellowship.
You'd be a chronic fellow. Yeah.
You'd be a chronic fellow. And then they give you in a lump sum.
Right.
Yeah, so of course. And then it comes at around March or April there.
Mm-hmm.
You're beginning Jan, but it comes at around March or April there.
Yeah, so what did you do in the interim between January and March?
So you have to save. You have to save before you go.
Yes. You know, you've talked about money and I'm actually tensing because of, from a funding perspective, that has actually been the barrier for so many people.
Yeah.
In terms of, you've mentioned a little bit about the funding. How was this for your family? You're a family person and now you're having to travel to another country.
Yeah.
So, how did your partner take it? How did the kids take it?
Yeah, so my wife was very supportive. When that letter came, it's like you need to go.
Oh, wow.
So it wasn't, there was no discussion. It was, you are going. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So that was enough.
Yes.
In fact, financial, I find it to be, you can survive financially, but the emotional part is the one which is more, and the family part, psychological, that's the one which is more challenging than the financial. Yeah. Because financial, you can sell something, you can do some locums and save and.
Correct.
But now, what about
your partner, your wife, your husband, right?
And you're leaving a small child as well.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. And shout out to your wife, because I don't take it for granted when partners are able to say, you know what, you need to go do this thing. Yeah. And on a personal note, did your wife always know that this is what you want to do? Like, you want to eventually go into a fellowship training? Is that a conversation that you'd been having from before?
Yes. It's a conversation we had before. Like, if a fellowship comes... In fact, immediately I had finished ENT, I was applying for fellowships. I had applied for a head and neck, I think, in Australia. We were, like, following it up. So it was something that we were psychologically prepared for.
Yeah, and an ongoing conversation about...
Yes, it was an ongoing conversation.
Yeah. Oh, hey, shout out. I haven't, shout out to her.
Yeah.
And everybody else who has to sit down with a loved one and just have these conversations. Because that support is gold when you head out.
It's more important than the financial one. You'll survive financially. You can buy something, and so long as you have somewhere you're staying. Yeah. If you have that mental support, then it's much, much better.
It's much better. How old were the kids when you were heading out?
I have one son.
One son.
Yeah.
Yes.
He was 3 years. Wow. So he hadn't started school yet.
Yes.
Yeah, so maybe I was lucky there.
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
So nice. Yeah.
Yeah. No, that he was really young. And
so he didn't even know.
He didn't quite understand that dad has disappeared.
Yes.
Okay. What was the actual learning like in the program?
Yeah, so fellowship, it's apprenticeship, basically. You follow your supervisor wherever he or she goes. You're there. It was basically Monday to Friday. Of course, some weekends you're on call. it was ward rounds, clinic, theatre, ward rounds, clinic, theatre, and this was both in public and private space. I was lucky. My supervisor also took me to a private practice, and we went along very well. And I saw all the angles that South Africa has and Cape Town has in terms of their medicine, and it was really nice. You need to humble yourself. You're not going there as a consultant. You're going there as a, can I say, senior registrar?
Yes.
Because when you go there as a consultant, you'll get a shock of your life.
Yes.
Nobody treats you like a consultant.
Yeah.
You'll be treated like,
a learner.
You're a fellow.
Yeah.
Fellowship is something new.
Yes.
Basically.
In a lot of spaces.
In a lot of spaces. So you're still a learner. Mm-hmm. Okay, you're above the registrar, but in most of those situations, you find yourself in that space of registrar, and you're above them. You're expected to teach them.
Yeah.
They look up to you, but you also have your supervisor as well.
Yeah.
Who looks upon you to teach them. Mm-hmm. At the same time, you have to do the work.
Yes.
You have to do the manual work as well. You know?
Have to do. Yeah.
So.
Yeah.
Actually, it was more of doing and learning skills.
Right.
More than even reading.
Mm-hmm.
Of course, you have to do the reading. But maybe I'm talking because it's a surgical space that I was in.
Mm-hmm.
So it's more important for us to do the skill. Mm-hmm. The pediatric airways, learn them very well.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think it's really interesting to just hear about you transitioning from a consultant level into a learner mentality. Was that hard for you, or was that easy for you, just based on your personality?
I think it's based on personality, but it was easy for me.
Yeah.
I knew that it's a learning space. And then you're going to a different country.
Yeah.
A country that is higher than your country.
Mm-hmm.
So you always have to humble yourself, because you assume maybe they have better knowledge, or they have more knowledge than you because you came from a country which is maybe lower ranked in terms of GDP and all those things. But you find medicine, it's global, it's the same. You all have the same knowledge.
Mm-hmm.
But I think that perspectives makes you humble yourself from the beginning. And then after that, you can start being more confident.
Right.
By the time you're finishing, you know your space.
And you know your space, and you know what it is that you're going to do.
Yeah.
I think you're better than me. For me, I had struggled because even just getting to that point of consultant, it took me a while to settle into that space of, I'm working as an autonomous, person. I'm in charge of decisions.
Yeah.
And then a few years after that, I'm thrown into a space where autonomy out, and now I'm back to that learning space.
Yes.
And learning a new skill, like you're saying.
Yeah.
There's a lot of reading, but then there's a lot of that nuanced stuff that you have to be in that room, you have to be with your consultant just to see how do you navigate this emergency. And
exactly. It's like the way you are doing that adolescent pediatrics. When we were doing pediatrics, when you're doing pediatrics even as a master's level, when you went there and did adolescent, now you're starting it like it's so this is what happens.
Right.
Okay. And then you get into it, weeks, months pass by, and then
the next
you get in tune now nicely.
Yeah.
But now there's that aspect of you started now as a registrar.
Yes. As a learner. Yes.
As a learner.
Yeah.
So you have to humble yourself, but with time you get into it. Nicely.
What were some of the highs of your training while you were in South Africa? Could you think about some things that, Yanni, really stood out in your mind as huge positives and highs?
The surgical side, the theatre space was really nice. The way we used to handle the pediatric cases, especially in theatre, it was very cool. There, we could even arrange 7 or 8 cases in a day. There used to be something called the Huddle. You start discussing with the anesthesiologist at around 7. Was it 7:15 or 7:20? It was just like a 10-minute talk.
Yeah.
Where all the anesthetists, all the surgeons gather. Everyone is talking about everything that's going to happen that day. And then theatre began at 8, all the way up to 5. You could do even up to 7 cases. Then they were it was a public hospital, but they were very friendly with the parents. Since it's a pediatric setup, the mother would be dressed in a gown.
Right.
You know, the way us children enter, the mother is left outside.
The mother is left in the waiting bay, and the child is taken
to theatre crying.
So what did you see here?
They were going to theatre together.
Wow.
Until the child is gassed down. Until the child is sleeping. That's when the mother leaves. And then now that's when you start fixing lines and all those things.
Yeah.
So the child feels comfortable and, you know. And then even in recovery, the parent would enter. Not in the immediate recovery, but now after the child has woken up a bit and out of danger.
Yeah.
So I saw that being very powerful. Some of these things we take for granted. You know, when you just pick a child and the child is going crying.
Yes, and you've been seeing it in one way and just seeing this new model.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then the surgical skills, how we dealt with those pediatric. Most of them were pediatric airways. We had pediatric head and neck cases. There were pediatric otology cases. But the airway cases were what we focused on mostly, the stride, those croups, laryngomalacias, those things. So how we handled them, it was a whole different perspective from how we were doing here. And it really made sense why I was doing that fellowship, because I have that urge to do the same thing now here. I liked the cooperation between various disciplines. We could have multidisciplinaries almost on a daily basis. The pediatrician, the intensivist, we are discussing with the ENT, we are discussing with the anesthesiologist on almost majority of the cases. Even a small 10, 15 minutes, that doesn't take time. What do we do here? What do we do here? What do we do here? And you gather together and you make the best decision, which is patient-based. And that was really positive. Yeah.
Yeah. And I'm so glad you got to see that being modeled because, like you said, we are now getting into a new era in terms of how we are caring, standing on the shoulders of these great people who went before us and improving it as we move along.
Right now, even if you're in a consultant in a teaching institution, just arrange a meeting with your fellow colleague, whether it's maybe the intensivist, you have a quick discussion. Not that thing of tell your registrar to call the other registrar, then the registrar calls the so it's like a wave of information passing by. Why don't we teach ourselves? We make a quick decision together.
Right.
Me, I am with my registrar, you're with your registrar. We come together, we talk, we make a decision. That's how people learn. Not the ego thing of I can't be called by, I don't know what, I can't be called by this person.
Yeah.
If I want to talk to you, Njeri, about this patient, why don't I
call you directly? Right.
Why should I go through the registrar?
Yeah.
But when I'm calling you, my registrar is with me. And maybe when you're answering your phone, your registrar is with you. Then we are meeting and we are discussing. That's how people learn.
That's how people learn. And that's how, even for the registrars, they learn about that communication piece and the key things that you need to be able to share.
Yeah.
And I think it's so important because, especially going from a space where we learned in such, our medical education setup is so hierarchical. Is that the word? It has a lot of hierarchies.
Yeah.
And we're shifting from that to now breaking that down just a bit because it's creating silos. We're not able to communicate effectively. And I'm hearing you saying you saw a different model.
Yeah.
So those were some of the highs. What were some of the lows that you experienced during your fellowship training?
So the lows, I think maybe I can break it down from the start of the year was being homesick. Then you find people are constantly, on their toes working. So you have to catch up. When I was going to South Africa, you hear of apartheid and I don't know what. But let me just say it was maybe part of the highs. I didn't find it like that. People are interacting very well. I didn't experience any, the ones you can see in TV like racism. To me, I think maybe they had, by the time I was there, maybe they had modeled themselves in such a way now they are all partnering each other, probably working together. But you could still see the divides in terms of you could find this class of workers, maybe the doctors, the hierarchy are whites, and then the workers are black. Those ones are still there. Of course, it shows you they still work in progress. But in terms of the interactions, it was very, very friendly. The lows was just missing family. having to do the manual work again. You know, you had to put the lines again. And IV lines, you're a consultant.
Putting the IV lines as a consultant,
But I came to realize, even if you're a consultant, why are you not putting IV lines? You need to put the lines. You need to put the catheters and all those things. Being a consultant doesn't change you from being a doctor. You're still a doctor at the end of the day.
Right.
And you still need to humble yourself.
Before we move on, you talk about being homesick. Now, from a man's perspective, what was that like? You're a father, you're a husband, you have, your extended family. Talk to us a little bit about what that experience was like and some of the ways that you sort of mitigated that feeling.
So, of course, we'll talk daily with my wife, call my parents once in a while, and that would try and mitigate. But once after the phone call is over, you're still there.
Yeah.
You're still kind of like missing the usual environment. You're having a car, you're having your own house, and you have your internet and all those things. That internet was very expensive, and you really needed that internet, you know. Then the usual meeting with your boys, nyama choma, it wasn't there.
Yeah.
So weekends were very, very long.
Oh, wow.
Sometimes you'd even wish maybe even being on call is better
than being on your own.
Yeah, but later on now you get to make friends. Especially I made friends with my fellow fellows.
Yes, your fellow fellows.
My fellow fellows was one from Uganda, very good friend of mine. He's now back we are still chatting.
Yeah.
One from Tanzania, because that place had fellows from all over Africa, Ghanaians. So we would, at some point, in fact, we were wishing, why didn't we start this sooner?
Yes.
You know, at the first days when you're still new, you don't know people, it's really stressful.
Yes.
And even if you try and take some alcohol or something, it doesn't... it's not the cure.
It's not the cure. And then it's a thing that that keeps coming up in terms of making friends as an adult is really hard.
It's hard. It's definitely hard. I
Yeah.
think the single most important challenge in a fellowship, it's the social, missing your home, and the social aspect of where you are. In fact, the academia is best because you're out of it and you're focusing. It reminds you why you are there.
Yes.
But once you're back in your room,
the loneliness.
Loneliness.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
No, but it's good to hear that eventually that you guys were able to get together and at least have a community of people that you're still keeping in touch with.
Exactly.
Were there any other lows?
When money starts drying up. So you have now your salary. It's coming constantly, right? Then there's an insurance to be paid. Ya gari. Haya. Then there's I didn't even pay indemnity.
Oh
because
my gosh. You just could not afford
couldn't afford.
Yeah.
Luckily, nothing major happened. If there was something major happened, like some illness of some of my family members or something, I wouldn't be able to sort it financially. I would have had to borrow money. There was a conference I had to attend in the US.
Oh my gosh.
It's expensive going to the US.
Of course.
And it's really a conference that you can't really miss. And so you come back broke. So if you're doing a fellowship and something major that requires your attention comes up, that can be a challenge, and that's something you need to prepare for.
You never think about it until now you're in it. And at least you are able to go for conferences. For some of us, I looked at some of those conferences. You're telling me to go where? And for me, the budget was me and my family. We had traveled as a family unit.
You guys traveled together.
So now starting to say, guys, instead of eating this month, let me go for a conference. So, and then even in terms of like the funding sources within the fellowship for you to be able to attend would not quite cover your cost of being able to go there and be in the conference and come back. You are very fortunate that at least there was something. But then what I'm hearing you saying is that still funds do dry up.
They do dry up, and then when you come back, it's not like the funds now start coming back again. No. Remember, you're starting afresh.
Yeah. So what was that transition like?
I'm
once
still in
you
that
are done?
transition.
Yes.
So
what has it been like so far?
I wasn't mentally prepared coming back again. You know, you can be mentally prepared going, but you're not mentally prepared when you come back.
When you come back.
So when you come back, you have been into this world.
Yeah.
I was in this world of pediatric ENT. I was purely pediatrics. Then I came back, I started doing some locums a bit. I started getting bored. I'm seeing adults again. But you have to start from somewhere again.
Right.
People need to know what you did. So you have to kind of like organize talks. And luckily enough, many of my colleagues had known what I'd gone to do. So a path had already been prepared in a way.
Yeah.
And but it takes time, even to adjust back.
Yeah.
I'm still seeing adults, but I don't want to see adults in the next. I've given myself a target. There's a point it will reach. I won't see adults again. I just want to see pediatrics.
Yes.
Financially, you need to recover. So you still are forced to do the routine things. And it will take time before now I get into the fellowship, what I trained.
What you actually trained in.
Now to get into that space, I think I've given myself maybe this year. Next year I start being more
towards what your skills that you acquired.
And then at some point, I'm purely doing what I did as a fellowship.
As a fellowship. And I think it's so important because, like you said, we prepare ourselves to go. And there's not a lot of preparation that goes into when you come back. And for a lot of programs, what I've found is that transition to practice varies because, especially for international graduates, your teachers in South Africa can't anticipate what is this guy going to experience when he goes back to Kenya. They can give you some hints, but then on the ground, it's difficult to completely anticipate. Okay, I'm going to come back to this. I have to come back and do the everyday things that I was doing as an ENT specialist. And my subspecialist, I'll have pockets that I'll be able to practice, and I want to be able to figure out ways to expand these pockets. And I think it's really important for us to document how we expand those pockets because that is a gap that a lot of people, I mean, there's someone who told me, Njeri, you're coming back to Kenya, give yourself time.
Yes, I think that's the most important thing. Give yourself time. Because you've done adolescent pediatrics. Right. And then you're coming back, we're giving you this canionate.
Yes. That I must see.
That you must see.
Yes.
Correct. So you feel tired.
Yeah. And you're like, guys, where are the teenagers? Let me see the teenagers. And at the same time, if someone hadn't had that conversation for give yourself time, I would have been so frustrated.
Exactly, yeah.
During the time you were doing your fellowship, from a mental health perspective, were there any things that helped support you from a mental health, angle?
I would say maybe the friends that I made, because we were in this together. Yeah. There was that fellow in head and neck, there was that fellow in rhinology. So there were all these people who we would sit down on a Friday evening and vent.
Yes.
Over some whiskeys.
Yes.
Whiskey and...
and
I'll just be honest.
Yes.
Yes. So, and say, even this, the usual gossip. Yeah. That guy. That really helped.
Yes.
Yeah. And then it refreshes you. And maybe if that weekend, you'd meet again, maybe go for lunch.
Yeah.
And then we would have this, we used to go to this East African restaurant and have now chapati. And
yes.
So those are the things that mentally I came to realize really helped.
Yeah.
I didn't have that in the beginning. And remember, when you're there, you're new, you're alone. Remember, all the other people in that hospital, their families are there.
Right.
So they don't have time for you over the weekend. See, they have to be with their
with
families,
their people.
with their
Yes.
people.
Yeah.
In fact, they are being even accused of not being there all the time with their people.
So in fact, they want to leave you with the office on Friday and see you on Monday.
The registrars have a life there. They
Yes.
are married. They have kids. They
Yeah.
have, they have to do their other life things.
Yeah.
So remember, you're alone.
Right.
At least you went with your family.
Yes.
In SA, most of us didn't come with our families. I think because it was maybe 1 year. 1 year was 2 years, I think.
Yeah.
It was longer. When you're left that Friday evening,
Yes.
that's when the depression can start.
Yeah.
So once we got to meet on Fridays now, that time, then we became a family.
Yes.
Yeah.
When you think back on your fellowship experience, do you have any regrets?
No, absolutely not.
That's excellent to hear.
Absolutely not. There
Yeah.
are challenges, but life is like that. Life is challenges. Think of it like a duty. You have to do it. They call it 1% inspiration, 99% perspiration. Most of the days you're not motivated. You feel lazy,
Yeah.
dull. If you could sleep, just that
Just sleep.
Sinisiende.
Yeah.
Let me not go.
Yeah.
But I have to go. But most of it, it's, discipline and duty. It's a duty. You have a duty to do it. You have a duty. Once you feel like there are children who are waiting for you to come back so that you can try and sort them out.
Yeah.
And families, you have to do it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You have to do it.
So no regrets at all.
No regrets. I love it. And when if you had the opportunity, and I'm hoping through this space you have an opportunity to speak to somebody who's thinking about ENT surgery, or even thinking about from ENT surgery, thinking about a subspecialty, what would be your words of wisdom or your nuggets for this person who's in that contemplation stage?
I would tell them to go for it. It's your duty to do it. It's your duty to apply. It's your duty to enhance the profession. At the same time, try and maintain a balance in your personal life. Everyone has their own balances. It's never the same. Do you, but please go for it. It's usually worth it at the end of the day because you're doing something that you feel you have to serve the people, both in public and private space, or whichever you chose private space. But also there's that public space. Even if you're in fully private, you do a lot of pro bonos and all those things. And it's really rewarding once you choose that you want to do a fellowship. Go for it. Yeah, I wouldn't go for it and then deal with the challenges. And
in terms of to the medical student who is sitting and listening and trying to figure out, wow, what words of wisdom would you give the med student who's in there, who's decided to take a break and listen to the podcast?
Yeah. Medicine is a journey, and it's a lifetime. You never stop. Remember when we used to say, when you're finished undergrad, sirudi tena, nimetoka kabisa. Then you find yourself there in the master's program. Then you finish the master's, sirudi tena. Then you find yourself in a fellowship. Sirudi. Then you find yourself doing something. So it's usually a journey and it gets better. It always gets better. So for the medical student, just keep on. It gets better. And it's a life journey. You'll go do internship, finish, become a medical officer. You might want to pursue the medical side. You might want to pursue the non-medical side. All of it is okay. You just follow where you think your sense of duty is.
Yeah.
Not really passion, but your sense of duty.
Your sense of duty. I love it. Where your sense of duty is, where you feel you can do something. I really love that perspective. I've never really thought about it as a duty. I'm always this passion, heart, follow your heart. So hearing about the duty piece is so key as well. And if somebody wants to be able to get in touch with you, have a conversation, ask more about the subspecialty, is there a way that they can be able to reach you?
Okay. Yeah, I'm one of those guys who, when it comes to social media, I'm one of the worst. But you can reach me. I have an email,
Yeah, and so we
give
can
it
share
out.
it in
You can share
the show notes.
in the forum.
Yeah.
You can also, I think I'll also give you my Twitter, and I think it's high time I become active on Twitter.
Yeah.
And
So
Instagram.
what's your Twitter handle?
I don't even. I think I'll check. But I have Twitter. I can see even. I can see Twitter here.
Kageni will share it.
Yes.
To me, and I will put
then
it in the
you'll share
show
it,
notes.
please. You see,
And it
it's
will
Twitter.
challenge. And
Yeah,
it
and
will
I keep
challenge
on-
him.
And Instagram as well,
Yeah.
because I have them, but I don't use them.
Okay.
Yeah.
You have them, you don't use them. So the
Yeah.
challenge is, please reach out to Kageni
So that
on Twitter and
yeah.
Instagram so that he's able to, be able to check and respond.
Yes.
So I want to say a very big thanks. By the way, you are the first surgeon. You're the first ENT surgeon
Yeah.
on the Fellowship Safaris podcast.
Okay.
And
That's
so this is exciting.
It's an honor, definitely. And one more. In fact, I'll be working with the pediatric field,
Yeah.
I think, for the rest of my life now.
Yes.
That's the path I've chosen.
Yeah.
So, yes, it's
Welcome
an honor
to
to
the
be
fold.
the first one. Yeah.
Yes, welcome to the fold. And let me just say, this is how you know doctors are busy. Kageni literally had an emergency in the morning, dealt with the emergency, and then traveled from county to county to be here for this recording. So
Yes.
I really, really appreciate that.
Thank you so much.
And thank you so much for taking the time to answer all the questions that I had for you.
Thank you.
Yeah.
It's been an honor being here, of course. And many more.
And so I am hoping to hear, how people interact with this inaugural podcast, the ENT Surgeons podcast episode. I'm curious to hear what you have to say about it and the feedback that we'll get from it. So I look forward to being able to interact with the responses that we get.
Yeah.
And thank you all so much. Until next time, bye.
Bye-bye.
I'm so glad you stayed tuned. Please get the word out and share it with at least 3 people. Make this episode like a chain letter. Share it, share it, share it. Come back for the next leg of our safari where we'll be talking about... When I had initially talked about getting you guys into the studio, having the conversation about fellowships, what are the first things that went through your mind? Maybe we can start with Mom.
Mine was, Guy, what am I going to say?
Yeah.
I think for me, I was like, we typically talk about other things. We can talk about our companies, we can talk about all other different topics. But I think when it comes to family, everybody's like, yeah.
What will we
say?
Where will we start?
Exactly.
Listeners are advised to use their own judgment and discretion when applying any information discussed in this and all podcast episodes to their specific situation. Always seek the advice of a qualified professional if you have any concerns or questions regarding a particular subject matter. You can find this and other episodes of this podcast on our website at www.fellowshipsafaris.org. You can also find all our episodes on all podcast platforms. Reach out to us on social media as Fellowship Safaris on Facebook, Instagram, and TikTok, and our Twitter handle is @fellowshipsafar. You could also send us an email on fellowshipsafaris@gmail.com. We look forward to hearing from you and interacting with what you have to say about the Fellowship Safaris podcast. It takes a village to make this podcast. The executive producer and original music is done by Mokavi Maweu. The sound engineer is Tevin Sudi with thanks to AQ Studios. Graphic design was done by Benjamin Mboya. We would like to give a special shout out to Josephine Karianjahe and Melissa Mbogwa of Africa Podfest. All rights reserved by Dr. Njeri Karianjahe and the Fellowship Safaris podcast.